So now we get to the main presentation, and I get to introduce TC, who needs no introduction. If you don't know who she is, TC has been instrumental from day one in helping us provide the quality music that we get. That's wonderful. She does a lot of work at times, and she's very vocal. That was Gary's. I can't take credit for them all. Okay, thanks. I lost my train of thought. No problem. See, this is the part, Bart, I was talking about, where I'm just gonna
edit it out.
Edit it right out. Yeah. Ain't happening here, buddy. Anyway, TC has a wonderful topic. I can't wait to hear it. Is how to make $1 million in the music business without spending $2. And I think she might have already spent $2.
Actually, the talk should have been called "How to Make Dozens of Dollars in the Music Business." Dozens and dozens. I was told last night they were renaming my speech even before I came to give it, and they were calling it "How to Use Your Musical Talent to Get Laid." How to attract a mate. I said, I wish that were true, but we won't be talking about any of that. But one of the things I like the best about Oasis is that every time I come here, I leave here knowing something I didn't know when I walked in, and usually it's really interesting. And then I go and I tell other people about it. We've heard all of this really cool and lofty stuff. Some of it is over my head, but I still enjoy listening to it. The history and ethics and politics and philosophy and genetics and fractals. How cool is that? And everybody teaching this stuff is a scholar in their area. They're all degreed in what they do. They have credentials. But I have no credential. And what I'm going to talk to you today, I learned only through experience, not through any formal education. When I got the opportunity to speak here, I really didn't know what I was going to say or whether I had anything worthwhile. But I do have a lot of experience with what I'm going to tell you about today. And I hope you have some sugar in your coffee, because we're going to get filthy rich. Now, you know who Hunter S. Thompson is. Can you read that?
Sure.
It's a cruel and shallow money trench. It is a long plastic hallway where thieves and pimps run free and good men die like dogs. And there's also a negative side. But you will die like a dog before you make $1 million in the music business. And here endeth the lesson. Because you've been suckered by advertising to come here to hear about making $1 million, and I suckered you with advertising. And what we're going to learn today a little bit is how not to get suckered by advertising. We're going to talk about something that even our most lettered elite have trouble with. It's terrifying. Can I get a drum roll? We're going to learn about how to buy a new car. We're going to learn how to buy a new car, not just to do a good job at it, but to do it without talking to a salesman, and to do it without leaving any money on the table. And I successfully did this 2 years ago, and I was so happy with the method I came up with that I wrote an English paper about it, and I got an A. So, buying a new car is the second largest purchase most of us will make in our lifetime. Some of us, it might be the biggest purchase if you don't own a home. It deserves the same amount of effort that you might put into the purchase of a home. You could study for weeks shopping for a house. You might do your market comps. You might interview several agents before you decide who you want to deal with. Why don't we give that same effort to purchase a car? It could be a lot of money, right? But what do? We always stay in our hometown, and we never leave to go look anywhere else to see if there might be a better deal. We're prisoners to advertising and to the market we live in. But I did my homework, because I had never owned a new car until a couple of years ago. I interviewed some salesmen to ask them if they would tell me how they buy cars. And they did tell me after I bought them dinner. But, and then I gave their advice to my dad, and I said, Dad, who I trust the most of all in the world, is any of this true? He says, yeah, here's other stuff you can do to make your experience more profitable. My humanist values were not going to work very well in the car shopping process. They aren't humanists. They aren't treating you like one. Who in here has ever bought a brand new car? A lot of people. Is anybody thinking about maybe in the next year or two buying a new car? You all still got new cars. What would you need to know? All right. Have you seen many of these around lately? More and more of them. These are temporary dealer plates, and they put them on every single used and new car that's for sale in Texas. They have these because they can't keep up with the demand for metal plates, and that tells me the economy is getting better, right? I had to order 4 of these in 1 year. It took them a year to get me metal plates, and I thought, man, those prisoners in the prison system just can't stamp these suckers out fast enough. But if you're a prisoner in New Hampshire, that's what you're cranking out. Live free or die. If you had to be a prisoner and stamp those suckers out all day long. It's terrible. But anyway, I finally got a metal plate on my car. It took a year, but they finally got me my plates. My dad, I'd never owned a new car, but I had a lot of experience buying old used ones. I've been driving used cars for 32 years. My dad used to tell me to buy them when they were 4 years old and just run them straight into the ground. Any year that you don't own a new car is a year that you get to keep $6,000. Now he's right, because the payment on anything worth driving is going to be at least $350. And if you have to have comprehensive insurance, which if you have a note you do, that's another $150 a month, right? That's $500 a month. That's $6,000 a year, isn't it? So you shouldn't even think about getting a new car until the cost of maintaining and repairing your old used one approaches about half that value. Then it's worth it economically to even think about it. If you're out of debt, maybe do it. If your house is paid off, maybe do it. But new cars, and please change the way you think about new cars, they're for rich people, all right? My husband and I have been driving combined used cars for 70 years. He's been driving his used car for 38 years. I've driven used cars for 32 years, $6,000 a year into the 401k. It's $250,000 that we have because we don't buy new cars, okay? Let it sink in. I'm not kidding, it's really true. Now, that's my dad. That's his new mower, man. He's really happy with that mower. But that's the guy who gave me the advice I'm giving you today. Now, this was my last car. I had it for 15 years. I put 300,000 miles on it before I sold it to a guy from the Hops House who's still driving it today. I wrote a song about that car because it did everything I ever asked it to do. It's not my first car, but I do kind of miss it. This is my first car. Yeah, 69 Toyota Corolla.
Traction bar.
It had a vinyl top that was so cracked it looked like a road map. And there was a hole in the floorboard in the front seat and you could see the road going by. It was awesome. And I think it lasted 6 months before the engine blew up. But my dad found that for me for $300. And man, I miss that car. Anyway, this is after I got out of debt and I started touring more and going to Colorado back and forth all the time and putting a lot more miles on a used car. It just wasn't dependable enough anymore. But I did decide to get a new car, and this is the one I got. It's a 2012 Kia Sorento LX. It's the mid-range model. There's a baseline model below it, and there's an EX model above it. In 2012, the suggested price, taxes, title, licensing, destination fees, inspection, registration, floor mats, window etchings, would have been about $34K after taxes, but I didn't pay that much, not hardly. Now, I forgot to pass out the little pieces of paper that you were supposed to write your guesses down on, but I want you to go ahead and guess now, based on what I just told you, what you think I paid for that car. Find a piece of paper somewhere if you want to. Write your guesses down before the end of the presentation. Just come put them up here, and the one who gets the closest guess, I'm going to buy him lunch, right? Kim. Dang it. He doesn't want me to use his credit card. Okay. So there's 2 parts to buying a car. There's figuring out what you want, right? Oh yeah. Versus what you need. Okay. And I had to do this because I haul gear, right? I haul gear as a musician. I have to have something that will hold my gear, but I want to be cool too, And the problem with not separating these values is that salesmen take advantage of that weakness in us. our failure to separate what we want from what we need, and their sales practices, they can zero right in on how to erode your position. They want to sell you what they want to sell you. They don't want to sell you what you want to buy. And that's their only purpose, is to do that, to keep you in the dealership, not let you get away, and sell you on upgrades of some kind. And to begin this journey, I kind of had to admit that I really probably didn't really know why I wanted what I wanted, and whether it was a good idea to want it, and whether there was anything else out there maybe that was better than what I had in mind. So I cast a really wide net. And I had to think about what I could afford. And basically, any loan you get, regardless of the interest rate, your payment on a typical 5-year note is going to be about 1.75% of whatever the bottom line of the car that you get is, right? I'm talking about including all the fees, right? The bottom line. Multiply that by 0.0175 and you get your payment. And I bet you if you found your car on here, your payment's pretty close to what is calculated here, regardless of your interest rate. Do not haggle with your interest rate. Don't pay attention to interest rate advertising. It makes pennies worth of difference on your payment. So at the end of the presentation, we'll talk a little bit about where you might find financing. But there you go. A good humanist will want to make the most informed decision that they can make about buying a car. And my dad told me about a really cool comprehensive database on the EPA's website. It's kind of like the Consumer Guy's website. It's got all the details of every car that you can buy in the US market. And there are 900 different models for sale in the US. So if I want to look at all of those things and handle it, I mean, they had everything. They had the Bentley and kit cars and the Ford Fiesta, engine size, compression ratios. It has everything in this database. So I downloaded it into a spreadsheet, and I applied an autofilter to an Excel spreadsheet, and I put it on my website, so you guys can go download it and use it too when we're done. Yeah, I needed the autofilter to help me think about this whole universe of 900 cars that I could possibly buy, right? So I had some criteria, and you need to write your criteria down. My number one criteria was power. I knew I wanted more than a 4-banger because I drive on freeways and I need to pass people. But I didn't want an 8-cylinder because they eat too much gas, right? So I knew I wanted a 6-cylinder car. So I used a little drop-down box in that column to show me only cars that had 6 cylinders. That brings me down to 200 cars that you can't see, that would go way down. It was 900, now it's 200. We're making progress already, right? The next thing I wanted to consider was the transmission type. I used to drive standards. I enjoyed a stick, but not everybody in my family drives a stick, and they're going to be borrowing my car, so I needed an automatic. So you delete everything that isn't an automatic, and then you go down and you filter, or I chose to address cost of ownership, because I know that the gas is a big, huge part of my expense. They advertise on TV highway miles. But how many of your miles are really highway miles in the end? I tour as a musician, and I only put 30% of my miles on the highway. The other 70% of the time I'm in town. So you need to pay attention more to what are better city MPG numbers. So I used a custom filter in this column to show me only those cars that got greater than 19 miles per gallon in town. Still had 30 cars on there. That's a lot to consider, right? And then I decided for a drivetrain, the salesman's favorite tactic is to sell you all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. That adds $3,000 to the cost of your car. In Houston, it's flat. You don't need it. You don't even need a parking brake here. You know? So nobody uses a parking brake in this town. Okay, you're safe. You probably drive the speed limit too. So anyway, I decided I wanted two-wheel drive, which was fine for me, but I wanted front-wheel drive because we do have rain, and in Houston, front-wheel drive is a pretty good choice. So I filtered it for front-wheel drive, and look at there, 11 cars. I have eliminated 888 cars, however many. Anyway, it's a lot. And I also wanted to make sure it would fit all my gear. I needed a station wagon, a van, or an SUV, so I filtered for that. And suddenly, my process is simplified based on my needs. Now I can address my wants, right? Because I have addressed what I needed first. And I can't tell you. Now I know I'm never going to get the price of a Lexus out of a tip jar, so I'm going to go ahead and just goodbye, Lexus. Sorry, baby. Now it's time to go shopping. But we're not going to go to the dealership yet. We're going to go to a rental car. You need to rent. You may have 10 cars on your list at this point, based on whatever choices you make. But it's worth it to rent them all in turn, because it's only $20 a day to rent a car. And you get 24 hours to figure out what the features of the car are, whether it handles the way you like, whether it's going to climb a tree or whatever you want it to do, right? And if you go to a dealership to drive the car, you're going to get 5 minutes in a car with a salesman breathing down your neck, working on you for upgrades. So you're going to get all of this rental money back in the end, I promise you. It's the best money ever that you'll spend. Not kidding. I can't tell you how happy I was. I rented both of these cars from Enterprise, and they brought them to me, and they brought me back. I didn't even have to go there. For $50, I rented 2 cars, and I decided that I liked the Kia Sorento. That was my final answer. You got to make up your mind. And once you've made up your mind, you have to commit. You have to commit to only shopping for this make, and this year, and this model. And you're going to also shop and get your quotes based on the baseline model. You're not going to get quotes based on the model you want. You're going to go ahead and make the quotes on the baseline, and you're going to see why that's helpful in just a moment. Edmunds.com is a website that contains a database and reviews of dealerships all over the state. You need to make a little map and put a little pin on the map for every dealership of that car manufacturer. You're not going to Dalhart, okay? You're never going to go to Dalhart, but it's important that Dalhart is on this list. You need to draw little circles around your house about 100 miles apart so you know how far it is to each dealership. Also very important.
Why just the top 30?
Oh, because to do more would be more work than you're willing to
But what did
do.
they rank them on? You know, like why
Oh no, I just picked the top 30 highest volume sellers in the state. Yeah, it was just the most successful dealerships, the ones who order the most inventory, probably have better discounts.
Right.
Yeah, you know. But there is no dealership that's too far away to exclude from this process, because the ones that are farthest away are actually the most important. The best time to approach them is in the month of August, because that's when they have their fiscal year-end sales. It's not Christmas. Christmas is when they raise prices. Tax time is when they raise prices. You go in August or toward the end of any month, because they have sales quotas that they get paid on. They get commissions and bonuses based on volume sales. If you walk in on the 30th of the month, they're gonna deal. If you walk in on a rainy day at the end of the month, golden, right? But August 31st is really the best day to complete your purchase. But I would say start this process on the 15th, because it's going to take you a couple weeks to get through it. And you're also not going to talk to a salesman, ever. You're going to talk to a finance manager or a fleet manager. You're going to have to stand in front of these guys anyway when you go to close, right? They're the ones that you sign the paper in front of. They're the ones that have the authority to tell the salesman he can discount the car. The salesman has to run to him for everything. And the salesman's only job is to work on you. So start with the ending. Go to the finance manager and start with him. And you know, you're gonna fax back and forth like crazy. Now, a baseline model is the model, just to be clear, it's the one with the vinyl seats. It's the one with no ashtray. It might not have air conditioning. It might not have auto glass. I don't know. But you're going to get your quotes based on that model, even though you maybe don't intend to buy that model. The real bottom line includes an itemized quote. It is the post-last final price your bank will want to know, right? They'll go, what's the bottom line? It includes, it's the stuff that's not in the MSRP. The car is $29,995. Well, that's not what you're going to pay, right? You know that. You're going to also pay county sales tax, state sales tax, registration, inspection, security window etching. You're going to pay for the floor mats. You're going to pay for, the tank of gas that's supposed to be in it but usually isn't. These are all the fees you need to be asking them for in their quote, and say, give me the drive-out price, also called the bottom line. Now, before you begin this process, you need to buy yourself a good old-fashioned analog steam-powered fax machine. Because not everybody is scanning these days. I wish they were. But anyway, when you contact these guys, you want to do it by fax and then follow up, make sure they got the fax. But we're going to contact our friend in Dalhart first. And you're not going to have it with him. You're just going to say, hey, finance manager, here I am. So let me act out that little conversation. I'm going to get a little help from Johnny. And I'm going to show you what my first conversation was like. Johnny's playing the part of both the receptionist and the finance manager. Since he did such a good job last week.
Fitting, isn't it?
Presented. Yes. So this is kind of how it went, all right? This is how you should do your first phone call to the first dealership. Ready? Ring, ring, ring.
Good afternoon, Kia Dalhart. This is Donna. How can I help you?
Thank you, Donna. May I speak to the finance manager, please?
Yes, ma'am. Please hold. Good afternoon. This is Fred Thompson. How may I help you?
Hello, Fred. I need to get a quote for a drive-out price on a baseline 2012 Kia Sorento.
Certainly. Yes, that comes out to $25,995.
Wow. Does that include tax, title, license, and delivery fees? Like all of it?
Oh, let me check on that. Say, why don't you come on in and take a test drive?
Oh, no need for that. I already rented one and I just fell in love with it. Can you fax or email that itemized quote and your in-house financing rates too?
Sure thing. Are you trading in your old car?
Oh, probably not. I still have 2 kids that need my old car.
Okay, what's your email?
Fool me once at ignorami.com.
Sure thing. Let me know you got it.
Will do. Okay, so what I've done is I have refused to haggle with him. I let him set his own price. I don't care how high he sends me. He can send me the whole MSRP. I don't care. I just need him to send his quote to the next guy. So there's Johnny. There's me. All right.
I was not warned about that.
So you take your quote and you fax it to the guy in El Paso, right? You're never going to go to El Paso. You're using these guys to play both ends against the middle. That's the point. But wasn't that easy? When you receive that first quote and you fax it, you just ask him, hey man, meet it or beat it. It's up to him, and no hard feelings if he doesn't. There's a lot of fat on this hog, and you got a long way to go here. So if the dealer mentions at any point during this process that, oh, you know what, we're not going to give you a quote on a baseline model because we don't have any in stock. Texas dealers don't like to order baseline models because they don't have air conditioning in Texas, right? So tell them, that's okay. I'm not in a hurry. I'm just doing this for comparison purposes. I just need your quote on a baseline model. Even if you don't have it, I don't care. They'll send you the quote. You're not going to tell them when you're coming in. You're not even going to tell them you're not local. Let them think you're local, right? Now, here's the second follow-up conversation. Are we ready?
Yes. Buenos días, Kia El Paso. Esta Consuelo. ¿Podría ayudarte?
Oh, may I speak with the finance manager, please?
Yes, ma'am. Please hold. Good afternoon. This is Fred Gonzalez.
Hello, Fred. I just faxed you a quote I got for a baseline 2012 Kia Sorento from the Dalhart dealership. My sister at Pecos says that you can beat any other dealer. Is that true?
Absolutely. Where'd they come in?
Well, Mr. Thompson finally came in at $29,164, including tax, title, license, and delivery. The whole enchilada.
Oh, that's more than MSRP. What is he, crazy? We can do better than that.
Well, I sure hope so. It's such a cool car. I already rented one and I just fell in love. Can you fax or email me the same kind of quote?
Sure. Is this with a trade-in?
Nah, my kids want the old one. And give me your financing rates too, okay?
All right. What's your email?
Fool me twice at ignorami.com.
Okay. Nice talking to you.
Click. All right. So what I've done is I've begun a process, and every phone call will be like that. Don't tell them you have a trade-in, even if you do. It will erode the price they offer you, all right? So save your trade-in as a rude surprise for the end. And in descending distance, rinse and repeat. So the guy in Amarillo's, he's going to play, you know. You see here, guy in Lubbock is in. Guy in Midland came down another $700. Guy in Wichita Falls, and these are my numbers, folks. These are my numbers. Guy in Abilene, down 0.5%. You got Laredo made a serious bid. They took $800 off. Now, when you get to Dallas and you get to a dense market where there's lots of the same dealership in the same town, you can't game each one of them. They're going to rat you out. They're going to say, hey, I got this weird request for a baseline quote. Maybe don't talk to this person. Just pick one, get a quote, and move on. These calls are still worth a lot of money. There's nothing wrong with continuing. So, Dallas was close enough for me to actually consider a trip out of town to go get a car if they had a good deal. But I didn't really want to end it there. I hadn't really seen the bottom of the well. So I took the latest and lowest quote that I had from Dallas, and I recycled those farthest dealers, and I milked them one more time. Now that guy dropped out, and that guy dropped out. El Paso came in with a very aggressive bid, even though they had already given me $1,500 off. They were willing to give me more. I call that a Hail Mary. They were doing a Hail Mary, I'm not kidding. So now it's time to come home and shop for those few extra Franklins, because I could see my discounts were getting smaller and smaller. So I'm starting to get toward the bottom of the well. And I didn't really want to drive through the desert anyway, so I used them. I'm sorry, I used them. So I come all the way home, and that's what I got from Spring, Katy, and Pasadena. And we're almost done. And if you're running out of time toward the end of the month, kind of like I was, I could have gone on with all the dealerships, but frankly, when you get down to that $25 threshold, the guy in Spring only gave me $5 off. Please, the thing to do at the end of your process when you get toward the end of the month is go ahead and hit the biggest dealership in the state last. They've ordered the most inventory. They have the most to lose at the end of the month if they have a lot of inventory on their lot, because they have to pay property tax on what they carry. So that's why they give their salesmen bonuses and cruise tickets for making their volume numbers, their sales numbers. So knowing when to twist the knife is really important. So the lowest price for my car so far was in Pasadena. They came in at $22,290, but in Sierra Kia in San Antonio came in a smidge over $22, and I went ahead and I had to stop because I was running out of time. Now, I got to figure out too if it's worth it to go out of town. It's going to cost me, I need someone to follow me in another car so I can pick up my car, right? If it's out of town, I may have to put up in a hotel and feed them. It's going to cost me about $178 for an overnight trip to Austin, including the gas for 3 legs, right? Because I got to drive the new car back. My cost to retrieve is $178, but they gave me $290, so it was worth it in the discount to go ahead and deal out of town, and I did. I bought that car from Sierra Kia. And for those of you who like graphs, like Wayne might like this graph better, those are the numbers, and the red line is the progression of the MSRP with each city. And of course, these guys didn't want a deal, right? They dropped out, so they kept their old quote, and then it kind of went down. This is against the far axis, which is the size of the discount each one of them offered me. And the border towns seem to be the most competitive of all the ones that quoted me. So, it's a pretty good process, thanks, Dad. And here's where my baseline quote gamble pays off. I'm finally going to talk about why you're talking about a baseline. I'm never going to buy a baseline. I showed up at their dealership unannounced on the 31st of the month, but I had my quote. And I slapped it down on the finance manager's desk and I said, "Hi, I'm TC. I'm here to pick up my car that you quoted me on. We don't have any in stock." "Aw, that's too bad. What's the number for the state attorney general's office?" That's called, they can't advertise something for sale and make a quote on it for you unless they can sell it to you, unless they can deliver it. It's a violation of the Fair Trade Deceptive Practices Act, something like that. Help me out, Jeff. It's a BBB case, it's an attorney general case. They do not want that case. Now, if they do happen to have a baseline model, you either have to buy it or allow them to sell you an upgrade. All right? Now, keep in mind, this is an awkward moment to pull something like that on a salesman. but they'll survive. So will you. It's in your best interest. You're only doing what's in your best interest by using these things which are perfectly legal, and they would be very happy to pull these rude surprises on you, wouldn't they? So in the end, they did give me the cheapest model that they had on the lot, which was an LX model. They gave it to me for the baseline quote. The LX would have been another $3,000 above. So if I had quoted on an LX the whole way through, I'd have been $3,000 higher the whole way through, right? I couldn't use that bait and switch at the end. I did the bait and switching. They did it, okay? So that's how you do. I'm sorry, it's cutthroat. It's not very humanist, but it's consumerist, and that's what I am at this point. Let me see here. What else can I talk about? So it helped me to bait and switch them. Now, the other things you need to make sure they do at closing is that you need to make sure they give you a full tank of gas, because by law they're supposed to do that. Mm-hmm. And while they're filling up your tank, you bring you a cup of coffee and set up your Bluetooth devices while you're at it. And for that service, the salesman will become involved, and for that, he will make at least $1,000. So don't feel sorry for him that you didn't talk to him. You know, all they have to do is fetch you a cup of coffee, $1,000. Kind of makes me wonder if I'm in the wrong racket. All right. Now, you can finance through your bank. Credit unions offer slightly better finance rates. Car dealerships often even lower finance rates, but really it only shaves pennies off of your bottom line payment. But if you want to run the same con on the banks, you can do it. You can make a map of all the banks and go call them and make them compete. But it probably isn't worth it, because my bank offered me 8%, my credit union offered me 6%, the car dealership offered me 1.9% and no down payment. It was cheap money, so I went ahead and financed through the dealership. They opened up a savings account for me at Security Service Federal Credit Union in San Antonio, and my credit rating went up because now I have a greater credit facility. So, all my financial people with me? Agree? I hope? Okay. And basically that's it. That's how you buy a new car without leaving money on the table.